Cool. Hello, everybody. Today we have Jay with us for Maskless Men. Hi, Jay. How are you?
Yeah, I'm really good, Yaron. Excited to be here today and looking forward to
Cool.
having probably quite an interesting talk.
For sure. I'm also excited. I mean, we just spoke like for 5 minutes before the call, and I wish we had recorded it already because it was already so interesting and insightful. Before we get started, can you tell our listeners or viewers a bit about yourself and your background?
Yeah, sure. So my background really, I started in business, running my own business, my own coaching business, probably about 18 months ago. But my journey really into personal development, into business started around 7 years ago when I was serving in the Air Force. I'd served 9 years in the Air Force, but I'd reached a point in my career where there was something about it. I just wasn't lit up, I wasn't fulfilled anymore. I needed a new challenge. I was bored in what I was doing. And for some people, that sounds like the most exciting thing in the world, being in the Air Force. Wow, that's incredible. But for me, it just didn't fill me up. And so I made a decision against what everybody told me to do. Everybody told me this is a bad decision. You should stay in a nice, safe career
For
and
sure.
you should get a pension and get all the perks that come with it. And business is risky. That's what people told me.
Uh-huh.
But I went against their advice
Mm-hmm.
and I decided to start my own online affiliate marketing business. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I started selling products that were anything from $100 to $40,000. And I started to really learn the ropes on marketing and understand how business works, how marketing funnels work, but let me just tell you about that. Like, I didn't know anything about business. I didn't know anything about business. Like, I didn't even know what a lead was. Like taxes, what? Like this thing you got to pay taxes. That's normally all done for me. I don't need to think about that. I was absolutely clueless.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got into business and started learning how to market products, how to position products, how to sell products. And through this journey, I had to learn a lot about human behavior and human psychology. And what I actually found was I really started to love the actual human behavior element, the human psychology element more than I actually did the actual marketing, right? I found that quite boring, to be
Yeah.
honest with you.
Uh-huh.
But I quickly progressed and I was able to do really well in that affiliate marketing side. But at
Mm-hmm.
the same time, I also decided to start my own e-commerce company. I come across a company that was teaching people how to private label products, importing them from China, branding as my own, and then selling them on the Amazon marketplace. And I started in the US. And at the first item I ever sold, it was a baby lock to stop kids getting in the cupboards. And I was doing all my research and it was like, wow, this is an amazing product. And everything was focused around just get a product out there, learn the ropes, make money with your first product. And my first month I started selling, we did £13,000 in the first month
Nice.
selling this product and things were just flying off. But there
Uh-huh.
was a problem with that because we only bought 500 units because,
Oh,
cash flow, we were starting
yeah,
out.
yeah.
And within 2.5 weeks, we'd sold all of our stock and we still had a 4-week lead time plus shipping on our
Mm-hmm.
first product. And so we run out of stock. We dropped down the Amazon listings, but we managed to get our second batch of stock in.
Uh-huh.
We got a next set of stock in. That sold like crazy, moved up from like 13 to 25 grand a month. Like
Oh.
months that we were running. But
Uh-huh.
then what happened again? The Chinese, we reached out to our supplier and they said, oh, it's Chinese New Year.
Mm.
So there's a massive backlog. So now we're not going to be able to get you in stock for 3 months after you sold out. So eventually we went through this constant cycle of like trying to build this business and we got back in stock. We launched different products. I had a business partner at the time. We launched another product and then another product. And all in all, we did multiple six figures in that business. But it came to a point where I was like, I was doing really well in that business and I was still doing the affiliate marketing on the side, but I
Mm-hmm.
was really focused on like the money element.
Mm-hmm.
And I was selling these products that, if I'm being really honest, I didn't really care about. I was just like, it's like a
Mhm.
conveyor belt.
Yeah.
And the reason I wasn't fulfilled in the military is because I wasn't doing something that I really wanted to do, really
Mhm.
enjoyed. And I'd
Mhm.
fallen into this trap of chasing the money.
Yeah.
And so I started really asking myself some big questions like, what really lights me up? What motivates me? What gets me excited? And across my journey, I could see some clear paths where it was people, it was relationships, it was human psychology, it was behavior, that kind of thing. And at the time, I was like, you know what, I just need to get away. And so me and my partner decided that we were going to travel the world for 2 years. Just
Mhm.
one day, announced it on Facebook, and we were committed to making it happen through the work I was doing. So we went traveling for 2 years while I was doing some consulting work on the side, like the
Mhm.
marketing side.
Yeah.
And I was still closing down this business because I wasn't really aligned with it. So I closed down like the e-commerce business, the
Mhm.
affiliate stuff. I stopped doing that while I was really, if you want to call it, trying to find myself. And I was learning so much about
Yeah.
myself, the things that were stopping me, that was keeping me procrastinating, the things that were, that I was scared of. I was just learning just a massive amount about myself. And when I came back, I was still like, wow, I've got all of this experience. I've done all of these things over the last sort of 4 or 5 years or so. Where do I really want to go now? And one of my friends reached out to me who was starting a digital marketing agency for e-commerce stores.
Mhm.
And he said to me, look, you've had an e-commerce business, if you want to call it an Amazon business, people call it, but an e-commerce business. I'd love to bring you on board because I'm looking to run some advertising to them. So essentially at the time, I think when he brought me on board, he was working with maybe 4 clients, and
Mhm.
each of these clients was doing about 5 to 10 grand a month. And because of my experience and me and him together, working together, we went from sort of 4 clients to 20 clients who were doing anything from 50 grand a month to 500,000 a month. And we
Nice.
regularly had days where we'd do, 100+ grand in a day. It was
Nice.
crazy some days, and the clients were just getting
Yeah.
bigger and bigger.
Mhm.
And I did this for about 2 years after that, but I still found myself thinking like, this is not what I want. Why am I even doing this? And I just got so caught up in it. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take the leap again. I'm going to step into coaching. So I decided that I was going to start coaching people. I trained in neuro-linguistic program, NLP, timeline
Mhm.
therapy, hypnotherapy, and something called motivational maps, which is basically how each of us are individually motivated. And then I kind of was like, who do I really want to work with? I'm sure a lot of your listeners have probably had this same thing. Like, what's the type of product? What's the market? Who are my
For sure.
audience? Who do I go
Yeah.
after? You're laughing because you can probably relate to it as
For
well.
sure.
And I was like, everyone's saying that the riches are in the niches, and
Niches.
I
Yeah.
hate that word, by the way, but the niches, as we
Yeah.
say in the UK. And so I was like, you know what? I'm a guy, and I've gone through this incredible journey, and I've really skimmed over it, by the way, to keep it short-ish. And
Sure.
I went through loads of my own stuff to actually get to where I am today. And I could see
Mhm.
that there were so many guys, especially in business, because business acts like a mirror, because you
Mhm.
are the business essentially,
Mhm.
right? And if you don't function at a high level, the business doesn't function at a high level. And I could see so much of that. And so I was like, you know what? I'm going to start working with men. And so I started working and coaching men in different areas of their lives, like with their relationships. A lot of people would come to me and they would have a business problem,
Mhm.
like around their mindset, around business, or some blocks that were stopping them. They were procrastinating. They doubted themselves. They lacked confidence. And I could see that they didn't only have business problems, they
Sure.
also had relationship problems. And one of the things I always say is you don't have business problems.
Mhm.
You have personal problems that overflow into your
Exactly.
business. And that's why
Exactly.
you don't get the results. And that's really where I am today, where I run a company called the Masterless Men. And I also have a second company called Entrepreneurs Gym Online, where I partnered up with a good friend of mine who's a personal trainer, and we combine fitness and nutrition and mindset to work together to create incredible results for people. So that's really where I'm at today. Long backstory, but a shortened version for me.
It's a very inspirational story and very interesting, because you had so many transformations from being in the army, which I assume, because I was also in the Air Force, in the Israeli army. It's a very disciplined organization, and then traveling, and everybody is expecting you to go the safe route, the safety route, and then you have to reinvent yourself and have so many transformations, and then you gain money and you're not fulfilled, and you start asking questions. I know I kind of relate, because I've been there as well. So it's a very interesting journey for sure. And you mentioned the motivational map, and we also talked about it before hopping online. Can you elaborate a bit about the motivational maps?
Yeah, sure. So let me just frame this up just so we can really get the right context for this. So motivation is something that a lot of people talk about. And I'm guessing yourself, myself, some of our listeners, we've had those times where in our work, and it's geared towards your business motivational maps, you're not particularly feeling some of the tasks, let's say. You're not like, oh my God, I love this creative task, or oh my God, I love accounting, I love this stuff, or
accounting.
And there's other things that you go, oh my God, I just love to make money. Money feels amazing. I love buying nice cars. I want to buy nice houses. I want to buy all these material things. And some of you are just like, I just want to give. I just want to give and help and serve people in a really empowering way and see them transform, much like myself. And some of you are like, I don't care what I'm doing. I just want to be free. I want to be able to travel the world. I want to choose when I work, when I want to work, be my own boss, and have that autonomy to do what I want to do. Now, these are the emotional states that are important to you, otherwise known as your values, the things you value in your life. And motivational maps is based on the values that you hold in your work. So each of us makes a decision based on our beliefs and our values. And our values drive every decision. So if you were to look at your life right now, your life would be a reflection of the things you valued at certain stages in your life. Correct. So Yaron, if I was to ask you, you love travel, you're a digital nomad. I'm going to take a guess that freedom and autonomy is something that's quite important to you, right?
Exactly. It was actually our Northern Star until like 6 months ago. And then we decided we should shift to satisfaction, because we fulfilled the freedom aspect. So
yeah, good.
Freedom was the Northern Star back then. It still is somehow, but satisfaction is more of an important value for me at the moment.
Get it. And that's great. A great example. And also I like what you said, because your motivation has shifted. But I want to highlight that freedom is still important to you. Otherwise, you'd go and work for a boss, right? It also hazard a guess that security isn't high on your list either. You don't value security. Quite often, people who work jobs and like to be told what to do, they like certainty, they like safety, they like routine, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'd guess that you're someone who isn't particularly lit up by the idea of being micromanaged or told what to do, or you need to work these exact hours, right? And that's what I'm getting from you very quickly in this short time we've known each other. So these are the values you have. And everybody has a different set of values. And we call these our motivators. And when it comes to motivational maps, people often think he's just motivated by money, or he's motivated by giving, or we're motivated by money or giving. And quite often being motivated by money, it's made wrong. Like it's a bad thing, being motivated by money, because, oh, you're just so selfish. Because culturally, we've been conditioned to believe that having flash cars or showing off or having the nice houses or having the things we really want in our life is a bad thing. And a lot of us have been brought up with similar beliefs to that. And other people are told that, you know, if you give everything away, you don't get anything. You don't get money. We live in a culture where it's like very, very get. And that's why people are reluctant to give away value to people. And so there's 9 motivators, believe it or not. Rather than just 2, there's 9 motivators. I'll quickly run through them.
Sure, for sure.
So the first 3 motivators are, these are called the growth motivators. So the growth motivators are, the first one is spirit. So spirit is all about freedom, autonomy, about flexibility. They're quite often lone wolves, if you like. They like to go on an adventure and figure things out on their own. And I can see you smiling, Yaron, because it's probably resonating in some way, right? This is the freedom side of things. And you see a lot of these people in businesses, right? The spirit. The second one you have is searcher. Now, searcher is all about giving. They're all about having that deep meaning, that deep purpose in what they're doing. They want to contribute and give to others. And you quite often see this in coaches. You won't be surprised to hear that searcher is high on my list. Okay, so these are the people that are seeking meaning. And then the third and final one, so we've got spirit, we've got searcher, and then the last one, and I've just drawn a complete bloody mind blank on that.
So good.
Yeah, there's another one.
Never mind, we can look it up later.
Come back to it. So let me go through some of the others, and I won't categorize them, so it's easier. Then we have another one, which is it's creator. So creator. The creator. And some people will be creative. They like that creative element. Whereas if you give them like a routine to follow, they'd be like, I hate this, too rigid. They like to think big picture. Quite often you get these in businesses, visionaries. They're like wild out ideas, entrepreneurial style individuals. You get these in these growth motivators. And then we have the next slot, which is like the achievement motivators. So some examples of this, like the next one that we have is called the builder. So the builder motivator is all about a higher than normal level of lifestyle. They're all about making money. They're all about achievement. They're quite often about material items. So they like nice cars, they like nice clothes, they like nice houses. Now, people often misunderstand the builder. And the builder isn't always just about, they want to make money and buy these material things to show off. That's probably someone who's just deeply insecure in themselves, right? And they need something to validate themselves. They need people to say, oh, look at him in his nice car, look at her in a nice car. They need people to tell them they're amazing. Now, they're probably one of the other motivators, in fact, and that's where there's a confusion. These people, they are, when they buy themselves a nice car or buy themselves something expensive or go first class or whatever they do, these type of people, to them, it's not about the car. The car is just a recognition. It feels good to them because of they've achieved a certain level of success, and the car is a representation of that, the material thing. It's not necessarily always to show off, as people often believe.
Or about the conquering, you can say.
Yeah, it's about conquering. It's like you see a lot of these people in sales. So in sales, you see a lot of these people. So just to, you quite often like, and this is where this becomes really powerful as well. When it comes to teams, because for example, if you have someone in your team who's not a builder, but they're in a sales role, let's just say they're a contributor, they might want to give loads of value to people on sales calls and not actually make any money. You also find these people in things like media, finance directors, that kind of thing. Quite often you see these people in those particular roles. So they're massively misunderstood. And I think it's important that people get that as well. Now, the next one that we have is the defender. Now, the defender is quite often what you'll see in someone who maybe works as an employee, right? So they will be the type of person who they like the routine, they like the rigidity of it, they are motivated by they're motivated by like certainty and safety. And so in a team, for example, if you were to give this person too much flexibility, they wouldn't actually know what to do. They'd feel quite uncomfortable around this because they want people to tell them what to do. They don't always they don't want that autonomy. So if you said to them, like we're in lockdown during COVID right now, if you said to them, oh yeah, work from home, work your own hours, do what you like, just, you know, that is like hell to these people because they're so not used to it. So these are some things that we also need to consider around the defender. Another one is the expert. So some of you who may be listening might love learning. Yaron, do you love learning?
I'm a learner and procrastinator because I love reading and learning all the time.
Yeah. So these are, you know, learners, people who love to learn are high expert. Someone who has a high expert will be quite often the people who are maybe listening to podcasts, who are buying courses, who are attending seminars. And you find these people want to write lots of notes. That can often be an indicator of a learner. They like the detail side of it. So high learner, they're like hungry for information. There's never enough information. But then the problem with the expert is you often see credentials after their names, by the way, because they've done so many university degrees. Yeah. They've got a list as long as their arm, right? So you've got the expert in that case. The problem with these people is they might find themselves learning so much that they're just like, hey, I just want to keep on learning. I want to keep reading books. I don't want to actually take any action, right? This is what you can get with a lot of this type of person. I'm a high expert, just so you know. I like to learn from people. I like to grow. And so you see this one showing up a lot for me. Now, the next one we have are the relationship motivators. And the next one, the first one we have is the star. Now, this is where people get confused, I believe, between the builder and the star. So someone who's a high star loves recognition. Quite often they want to be the center of attention in whatever way they possibly can. So the star is somebody who is constantly needed reassurance, validation, approval, that kind of thing, being told they're doing a good job. So if you think about, as I'm sharing these, some of the people, if you have a team, as an example, and you have these different people, how do you motivate your team? Do you treat them all the same? Or do you treat them differently? Do you understand their motivators and what's motivating them in their life? Because if you don't understand these, you could be, as I mentioned before, you could be treating a defender the same way as you treat a spirit, and that's going to cause a massive problem in your team. So star is one example of a relationship motivator. Then we have the friend motivator. That's another one. So certain people go to work, they go to a job, they go to a career because they want to form like these deep, meaningful relationships with people. They want to get, you know, they're the type of people that know people's birthdays. They're the type of people that you know, they'll put other people before themselves. They won't actually claim that, you know, their life. This can quite often, this is not such a bad thing. This can actually be a really good thing because it's great for teams, right?
Yeah, exactly.
It's great for teams and bringing people together. So this is an example of a friend motivator. And the last one that's really throwing me, actually, what the hell it is, I'm going to come back to it because I've had a complete mind. I'm going to say fuck. So you, yeah.
This is very interesting. I mean, it's a great categorization of different motivators and very interesting. And I wanted to ask, is it dynamic? I mean, does this change, or do you believe that everybody have like fixed motivational maps, or is it something that we should try to optimize, or just recognize in our own self and in our team members and act accordingly?
I'm going to say the last one. It was director. Director was the last one. Quite often a CEO, quite often likes to make the decisions, quite often the person in charge. I'll leave it at that.
Awesome.
To answer your question, motivation changes. Personality doesn't tend to change that much after a certain age. If you think about, have you ever had one of those events in your life where it's like been a hugely emotional event, whether there's been a breakup in a relationship or somebody's passed away in your family, or you've ever had a failed business, or someone's wronged you in some way? Do you ever notice that that gives you a completely different outlook on life?
Yeah.
This is an example of values changing and shifting. Values typically also change as we go through our lives, which makes sense, right?
Sure.
If somebody isn't a father or a mother, but then they have a child, do you think their values change, or their priority of their values? They might still hold the same values, but their priorities for them actually change. And I think that's an important point to make clear here. We can have relatively the same values throughout our lives, and they may change, and they often do change, but it's more about the order in which they change, because values have a different priority. If you take two people, let's say, have you got any children, Yaron?
No.
Okay, so let's just say, Yaron, your version A of you loves to travel the world, your freedom, your high spirit, like you like traveling the world.
Yeah.
And then you don't have any kids. And then version B of you is Yaron now with a family. Now, I'd hazard a guess that in the beginning, high spirit is probably going to be high up on your list. Now, if you speak to any dad who's now got kids, spirit is probably a little bit further down the list.
Yeah.
And one of the relationship motivators, which might be, and this is strictly towards work, by the way, so I'm flexing a little bit in this, but your values around family is probably going to be higher on the agenda now.
Yeah.
So that's an example of a highly emotional event, which leads us to shift our values and for our priorities to actually change. So it does change. And I notice, I went through, I'm part of Tony Robbins's mastery program. And I actually, in a 3-month period, there was a lot that happened in my life, and my values basically flipped on their head in a 3-month period. So if my motivation can change in 3 months, my values can literally shift, because they're highly emotional events, Tony Robbins, the things you discover about yourself, then that could also be true for anybody else. So whether someone's an individual running a business, or someone who does have a small team or a big team, people are always changing.
Sure.
And that's consistent. And as a result, so is their motivation.
So what I'm taking, what I think I'm understanding, it's more about recognizing what are your values, not trying to optimize them, because it is what it is basically, but you need to recognize what are your motivational maps and act accordingly. So let's assume someone is coming to you as a coach. How would the process look like? You're going to try to analyze, give them tools to understand what are the motivation maps?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing we do is we take them through a motivational map. It takes about 15 minutes to complete. It's really quick and you get answers really fast, which is great. And that's why I think a lot of business owners love it, because it's like, I haven't got time for this, but 15 minutes, you can quickly identify what are your top motivators. What then happens is we get on a call, a debrief call, where we review your motivational maps, because there's a part of the maps that doesn't get sent to the person who's taking it. And this is where the debrief session becomes so valuable, because what happens is we get on a call and we establish context, and we look at the high motivators, normally the top 3 to begin with, to see how this is showing up in your life. So like some people might have a high builder on their motivators, but they're not earning much money at the minute. So their satisfaction of the fulfillment of that motivation is low. So they might score like a 3 or a 4. So we look at their work, we look at what's going on, we bring context to it so you can see exactly what's going on in your life. And then what we do is, like, I give you some ideas on, let's just say, for example, you're running a business. And some of you may already know, if you're a creative person, you're motivated by creative tasks, that is what really lights you up. That's what you really enjoy. But it really just affirms it. The map itself does that. Now, if you know that you're great at and you're highly motivated doing a creative task, and you have a high creator on your list, then it makes sense, doesn't it, that you focus the most amount of your time on tasks that are creative in the business that drive you forward. Whereas on the other hand, if you have one of the other motivators quite low on your list, then that's probably not going to be something you're going to be highly motivated to do, which is going to lead to procrastination, everybody's best friend, because you're going to favor the things that make you feel good, because the brain is always wired to move towards pleasure and away from pain. And some of you maybe associate pain with doing the creative tasks, and some of you love it. But there's other tasks which, like accounting, I know, Yaron, you were talking about tax earlier. Taxing, I'm just like, oh my God, I want someone to stick pins in my eyes. Some people would love that. Me, no, definitely not. I want to be out there, giving to people, adding value, sharing my energy, sharing tools, sharing resources, and helping people to transform their lives. So that's where it becomes really powerful. And then, for anybody who likes, like, we formulate a little bit of a plan, we give them insights. And if they need coaching from there in certain areas, because let's just say they are a high builder and they have a satisfaction score of, call it 3, then we know we need to create goals for that builder and hold them to account in that area, to follow through in that area, to make sure that they are hitting their financial goals. And with Builder, it has to be tied into some kind of monetary reward. Or some kind of item as a result of earning a certain amount of money. And this is where it becomes powerful. It's like, if you set goals, but they don't align with your motivators, then you're not going to be motivated to do them.
For sure.
And so this is where it becomes really powerful. And we're going into a lot of detail here, but like, I want you to really get the size of this when it comes to like operating as a solopreneur, start a business, or, whether you've been running a business for 10 years or you've even got a team running a business. It is huge. And think about COVID right now. How many people are demotivated as a result of COVID, working from home, probably got a stack of boxes built up in the kitchen and they call that their desk. And, I was speaking to one of my friends and they were saying that the house market is crazy at the minute in the UK, because people are switching to find houses where they can have an extra room for an office, because they're sick of working in the lounge and in their bedroom and everything else, right? So little insight there for you.
I have 2 questions related to what you talked about. The first thing is, when you analyze with the person who comes to the discovery call or the first coaching session, how do you make sure that the person doesn't have any blind spots? And
so how do I make sure they don't have any blind spots?
exactly.
So by blind spots, can I just confirm you're talking about like maybe limiting beliefs or things they may not be aware of? Or is it
let's say or limiting beliefs, or let's say someone that is not genuine with himself. It's hard to know ourselves. This is like the most the thing and the hardest thing to know ourselves and really truly reflect and understand what we want. It's hard. A lot of times it's hard to admit what we want. So let's say someone has, it's easier for someone to say, I'm a builder or I'm looking for satisfaction, while on the other hand, they are truly the opposite. But when they tell you as a coach, they share things that they believe that are true, but to be honest, they are not really true. You get what I'm saying?
Get it. Yeah. So
like just an example. Sorry for interrupting. Let's say I say I'm my Northern Star at the moment is satisfaction, but when I dig deep, I'm looking for certainty and I'm looking for making more money, for example.
Yeah.
How would you recognize this, or how would the tools that you suggest recognize the blind spots, or is it something that we ignore?
Sure, good question. So the maps reveal a lot, and you might think you're trying to cheat the system, and yeah, there is a little bit of room for manipulation, but really what I'd say is you're only cheating yourself. You know, like people pay for these motivational maps. So I guess like the people who want to take them are the people who are ready to become more self-aware, to understand themselves better, and they're ready to grow and change.
Yeah.
So the first thing I'd say is like you're cheating yourself. In terms of identifying blind spots, one of the ways I coach is through questions, right? Like most coaches.
Yeah.
And so I can see things that people can't see. So quite often I always give the example of I come there with my big torch and I just shine lights on things, and I let people consider that, because people think that they are, I'm going to say it, bullshitting me. They think they can see it, right? But it's only them they're convincing. I can see it because I've got experience and trained to know what to look for. And probably everybody else around them can see it as well. And actually, even more evidence is looking at their life. And when I get the context of their life through the call that we have, I will be able to see exactly whether or not this aligns, whether they're telling the truth or they're not. And so that's what I'd say about their blind spots. And if they're not telling the truth, if they're being dishonest with themselves, because I'm a leader, I will hold them to account on that, and I will call them out on it. Just the way I operate, I make a stand for people because I see them at their best, and I know that there's a guy called Bessel van der Kolk who wrote the book, The Body Keeps the Score. It's all around trauma, very in-depth, very interesting though.
Famous book.
One of his famous quotes, which I use regularly when I'm sharing in these podcast interviews or my videos, is the biggest source of struggle is the lies we tell ourselves. And here's the reason we lie to ourselves, is because the ego hates it. The ego hates the truth.
Yeah.
And the ego, what it does is it fluffs things up and makes it out to be better than what it actually is. But here's the thing, when we can be truly honest with ourselves, we create an opportunity for ourselves to grow. Because until we're honest with ourselves, we cannot grow. And I always say to people, I'm always like, how can I grow? How can I improve? Like, how can I do business better? How can I help my clients get results quicker, faster? Like, what do I need to do? Who do I need to become through that process? And I often ask people for feedback. And you know, when people give feedback, they kind of go, oh, yeah, it was good. Yeah. But a lot of the time, they don't really mean that.
Sure.
There's things they want that they weren't happy with that they don't necessarily communicate. And so one of the big things I always frame it up with, I'm like, look, I'm going to be really honest with you to start before you give me this feedback. Do not rob me of the opportunity to grow.
Exactly. Nice.
I need you to be really honest, and like, do not think you're going to hurt my feelings, because you're not. I said, if you say something, it's probably going to make me feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I'm going to thank you for it. I'm going to be grateful for it because it's going to show me my blind spots. It's going to show me where I can grow from. And normally I get the level of honesty that I really want from them as a result. And it allows me to grow because they are honest with me. I can be honest with myself and I can make the changes necessary in order to actually grow.
That's awesome. So cool. When it comes to hiring a coach, many people come to me in regards to the e-commerce business and say, listen, I only need the ads. Everything is correct. I only need the funnel. I'm having only problems with my Instagram. So a lot of the time people think they have a specific problem, but when you zoom out as an expert, you see that these people assume that they have a problem in one field, while to be honest, the problem might be in the other field. And as you mentioned before, when people say they have a business problem, but it's actually from a personal perspective, they have problems in their relationships or with their health that project on the business. So this is something important that I also encounter a lot. And when it comes to hiring a coach, there are different attributes that are important in hiring a coach. Like he can hold you accountable, he can share knowledge, he can show you case studies, share from his own experience. What do you find most important, or what do you find most beneficial to the people that you coach? Is it the accountability aspect, or the good questions that you help them reflect? Or can you elaborate a bit about this?
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to hiring a coach, like there are certain things I'd recommend you always look for. And the first thing I'd ask yourself is, has this person done the work? Are they in alignment with what they're talking about? I talk about mindset. I talk about transformation. I talk about investing yourself, right? Tony Robbins cost me £8,000, I think it's about $12,000. I'm someone who invests in myself. I think I always say, like, I don't even know how much I've invested in myself, but it's way up there towards the £100,000 mark. Yeah. And like, people who practice what they preach. And some people will have the argument of, oh, well, just because you're not practicing what you preach doesn't mean you can't get people the result. And that is very true. That is very true. There's plenty of people that are great business coaches, and helping other people get results, but they suck at other areas of their life, right? Yeah. So you have to consider that. But for my personal preference, I would always pick a coach that's in alignment with what they're talking about. The reason I'm able to share my stories, the reason I'm able to help people transform their lives is because I've gone there, I've lived it, I've breathed it, and we haven't even touched on that, right? But I've done the work. So that's what I'd really say is really important. In terms of, like, people often look at qualifications, and as I mentioned before, somebody who's a high expert is probably going to look for qualifications in a coach because they like that. Yeah, that's important to them in a coach. Yeah. And this is where it really comes into play. Being able to ask powerful questions is important, but really one of the biggest things I'd say from a coaching perspective is people in the coaching industry often talk about coaching being just asking questions, just empowering questions, and get people to do a few exercises. To make a distinction between mentorship and coaching. Mentorship is someone who's walked the path, they've done it, they've got the t-shirt, they've got the result to prove it. Coaching is about using you because we believe that you already have all the resources and resourcefulness to find the answer. So we ask questions to extract it out of you. And so there's a common misconception. The other thing about coaching is we do not give advice. Well, that's what the book says. Do not give advice in coaching. I'm a little bit the other way, not so much fully that way, but the other way, because I ask great questions. But I also share my perspective from my experience, my stories, that, if I have a client that's going through a bit of a sticky spot, I will actually share a story of mine, which could be perceived as advice, but actually it's just imparting wisdom onto them. I'm not just going to sit you there and you're like, Yaron, I'm going to ask you question. And you're like, I just don't know. And I'm just going to sit there in silence and go, well, figure it out, Yaron. Because you're going to get really frustrated with me. Yeah. You want to leave.
Mm-hmm. So do you have any example that comes to mind of like a client you had recently that really had some issues, and you could share, like, without harming his privacy, share some details about what the process looked like and what were the results, like some kind of like sharing a case study? Do you have anything in mind?
Yeah, sure. So I've got one of my clients right now. He runs a business. I won't tell you what type of business he runs. And he actually, we've been working together for about 2.5 months now. And early on in our relationship, we aligned like what his goals were, where he really wanted to get, got crystal clear on that. I don't tend to move towards goals, because goals are just like an idea that are a target. I tend to focus on what's the result we're committed to creating, rather than goals is like, it's like 30-day challenge. Well, the problem with that is at the end of 30 days, you go back to your old identity, back to your old way of doing things, right? Because 30 days is up and now it's okay. Because I've made it through January to eat as much cake and Chinese and Indian and anything you want, because I've completed the 30 days. No, like I'm about creating the results. So we aligned like what his results were. And I said to him, okay, what are some financial results you want to create in your life, in your business? And he turns around to me and says, well, to be honest with you, one of the big things I really want to do is I want to buy a house with my partner. I says, okay. What's that going to take, like financially? And he tells me, I think he said, I need to say £45,000. I was like, awesome. He's like, I said, okay, let's do it then. And he's like, well, no, I can't do that. Like not in 3 months time. And I was like, limiting belief. I says, okay, stop you right there. Says, let's park that for a second. Park that limiting belief that you can't. Anytime you say I can't, it's a limiting belief. So I said to him, okay, let's just play in what I like to call limitless thinking. I said, forget about anything that's ever happened in the past, anything you've ever done before, how you did it, or where it went wrong, or where you failed. I want you to just sit with me for a second. I want you to just run me through, hypothetically, if anything was possible, how would you create £45,000 in the next 3 months, say? And he's like this, and he's a high creator, so he likes to brainstorm, and he loves big vision and ideas and that kind of thing. I'm like, okay. So what happens is he lists like 10, 15 ways in which he could make 45 grand in the next 3 months. And I just sat there and just went, and he starts laughing. So you said you can't do that, right? But you've just given me 10 to 15 answers of how you can do it. And so from there, we set an intention to create it. We picked a strategy that was most aligned with him and his business, and that would create the result that he wanted. And I held him to account on it. And then I spoke to him actually yesterday. I said to him, I just want to check in on, creating that result for yourself, like getting that house where you're at. He's like, pretty much done.
Wow, amazing. That's amazing.
And he's like, and you know what's even better? I'm going to have more than that.
Nice.
And it's like, quite often we'll I always say to people, there's plenty of people that will put you in a box and put limitations on you without you doing it for yourself.
Yeah, you don't need myself as well.
And it like this is the saying, and we drill it constantly. It's never a lack of resources, so it's always a lack of resourcefulness. And if I was to set any one of your listeners the intention to actually try and create 10 grand in the next 30 days, and I asked them to do what I did, that same exercise, they would come up with ideas. And when they challenge their minds to actually think bigger, rather than the old ways of doing things, they would come up with the answers and the ways in which to do it. It doesn't guarantee they'll create that amount of money because they might not have a coach, or they might get in their own way, or they're not in the right environment, because we know environment is huge. And so that's just an example, just to demonstrate that we're capable of more than we actually realize in such a short period of time. But really, it's about surrounding yourself with people who are thinking bigger, who do demand more of you. And as Tony Robbins always says, they hold you to a higher standard than you could ever demand of yourself. So that's what I'd say to that.
Yeah, I have two follow-up questions. Very interesting stuff. The first thing, I want to transition to an objection or something that I encounter a lot with people that come to me for consultations. I basically, generally speaking, I prefer helping people who already have some sort of revenue and profits. But oftentimes beginners come to me while they still have a 9-to-5 jobs, and they are starting an e-commerce store as a side hustle. And they normally get back home drained from energy, and they do have some sort of motivation, but at the end of the day, they are really tired. And it's like a phase of creating your own freedom and working 2 jobs that people struggle with. And I most of the time, I just tell them this is the perfect time to start, because it's not going to become easier further down the road. But what advice would you give these people who come back home drained after the 9-to-5? The bosses were giving them directions, and now they need to start working on their own financial and geographical freedom. So how would you approach this?
Let me just ask you something. When they are having a conversation with you around this, do they complain? Is it a problem? Is it like, what's their response to this, so I can get an understanding of where they're at?
It doesn't sound like a complaint. It's more like sharing. It's more like they share the situation. It's not from a complaining mindset, I assume, but it's more for like a sharing mindset, I guess, the majority of the people. I think it's more of a sharing mindset.
Because in my experience, quite often when you've got a full-time job, and I've been there as well, and building a business on the side, you are exhausted, and you've got to dig deep to find the energy to actually go ahead and do that, right? And one thing I'd say to this is that, if possible, one thing I recommend is, if you work a full day, you're drained, then you need to find a way to fuel your body again, like a breath work exercise. Like I do Wim Hof, I do cold showers, I do ice baths, that kind of thing. I prime my body. I'll go and work out. I will listen to music. So like, there's ways in which we can create energy. And I know, like, I'm like, mentally, you might believe that you have a limited capacity, which I do believe we do to some extent in a day. I honestly believe we're like a battery, and we only have so many decisions we can make in a day. So like, what I might say to that is, if you come home from a hard day at work and you're stressed and you're tired, you need to shift your body. You need to shift your energy up. Go for a run, go work out, drink plenty of water, fuel your body, get some music on, like move. Like, that's really important, because a lot of us are sitting down on our backsides all day and we're not really moving. So that's the first thing that I'd really say. The second thing I'd say is, make sure you are super clear, I say, and intentional about how you use your time. Don't just come home and go, oh, what am I going to do this evening? And a bit of this and a bit of that. If I know that the thing that drives my business forward, my e-commerce store forward, is ads, I'm going to focus on ads. And that's going to be my top priority every single day. Ads, 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 ads. Because I know it drives sales. Not making a website pretty or anything like that. If I know I have a big email list, or an email list at all, and I know that I can drive revenue from that list, I'll create an email. Now, little tip here. if you've had a hard day at work and you are down, or, you know, it's been stress or whatever it is, and you're like, shit, I've got to do this. Like we're physically and emotionally drained, and we want to distract ourselves with the easy stuff, not the stuff that's going to drive business forward. So what I recommend, if you can do it, is on a Sunday evening or a Sunday morning, whatever day works for you, you plan what you're going to do in the evenings ahead of time.
Yeah.
So that you know, you don't need to think about it. You get home and it's like in the plan.
Exactly.
Like, and the other thing I'd say is make sure you put a time scale on it. One thing I love to do is I like to put a timer, and I'll set it for like 1 hour for a task, or 20 minutes or 30 minutes, and I'll beat the timer. That's partly because I'm quite competitive, but here's the thing. The task always expands to the timeline you give it.
Yes, Parkinson's law, which is the Parkinson's.
That's it, Parkinson's law.
Yeah.
It's important that we, we're intentional. We have constraints. We have parameters to complete the mission, and that's what I'd say, because otherwise you're going to spend half your time thinking about it. But here's another side to it. I plan my week in advance, but I plan my day by day, the night before. Now, the reason I do that partly is because what happens is, we always say, like, you've got two parts of the brain, the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. The conscious mind is the goal getter, the goal setter. It's the CEO, if you like. It makes decisions and creates like what you want to create. And the unconscious mind is the goal getter. Now, when you go to sleep at night, if you plan your day the day before, your unconscious mind is going to be working all through the night to figure out how it can help you. It's going to look in your environment, what resources, who do I need to speak to? And it's going to be working in the background, doing the heavy lifting for you to help you to create that result, because it wants to help you create that result, believe it or not. Your mind isn't all bad. All that noise in your head isn't all bad. Like, it wants to serve you, because it's like a slave to the conscious mind. So that's a really
amazing. So it's shifting of the energy by physical or anything, like shifting your mindset before starting the side hustle, and any clarity exactly what you need to do, and correct planning if I need to sum this up. And totally, I agree with the method of planning one day before. I mean, at the evening before. Whenever I do this, I'm not able to be very consistent with this, but whenever I do this, it works like magic. It's amazing. Exactly what, like you said, like the brain does the heavy lifting. You wake up, you drink your coffee, you eat your breakfast, you go to the gym, and then you just start the day and you have clarity exactly what you need to do. And it's amazing, because the results, sometimes at the beginning of the week, I get all my goals fulfilled in one day for the whole week, just because I was clear enough and exactly what I was planning. And this is amazing. We have to wrap it up soon, but I want to ask another question, because
go for it.
Regarding, you mentioned having good people around you, and the fact that you elevate based on the standards on the people that surround you. So how do you find good peers? Where do you find good peers? How would you suggest finding good peers? How did you find good peers? Because it's one thing to hire coaches, it's important, but I also believe that we have to have people, like, in my mind, when I hire a coach, I prefer to hire someone that is 10x better than me in the certain field. So if I'm doing bodybuilding, I'm going to take a pro competitor. Guy, someone who made tens of millions. But on the other hand, I also find it beneficial to have peers, people that have the same mindset as I do, or they are in a kind of an equal level to my level. But so how do you go about and find these peers?
This is the big question, right? How do you find these people? So communities of people are all over the internet. You know, you see Facebook groups, you see forums, you see all of that kind of thing. What I found in my experience is the best way to find people is to pay for it. like find masterminds where there's people like you in there, you know, where you can learn from each other, you can grow together. Find communities with people who have a common goal, they have aligned values in where they're going with their life. Because Facebook communities, as an example, are great. But there's often too much noise. You don't really get that personal time. And so, like, for example, I'll give you a simple example. Like, I did Date with Destiny with Tony Robbins, and I can't remember. I think there was about 12,000 people on that virtual seminar, and you were put in like these things called micro teams, and I think there was about 150 people in that micro team. Now, even that was just way too noisy for me.
Yeah, a lot of people.
But you know, over the course of the 6 days, I discovered people that I really liked. And so what I decided to do was I reached out to them because I knew they were similar to me, like they were in business, they wanted to grow, like they're into personal development, Tony Robbins, some of the methodologies that he uses. So after that event, I reached out to them and say, hey, do you guys want to set up a call once a week, once every couple of weeks, and just jam and mastermind and maybe just hang out, you know? And that is one thing that I did to actually improve my environment. I also want to say about environment is it's not just physically being with people all of the time. You're listening to this podcast right now. You're listening to me. You're listening to Yaron. These are what I call inputs. The inputs you're feeding your mind with, whether you're listening to quality podcasts from people who are at 10x in where you want to be in your life, or people, you know, who inspire you. All of that input's been fed from your environment into your brain. So whether it's hanging out on a mastermind, listening to great shows, or reading books, all of that is feeding your mind, and it's going to influence your environment. So going back to like really answering the original question, there's no right or wrong way of doing it, but find people who have common interests in you, as you, like-minded people, and pay to be around those people, because there's a lot of freeloaders out there, people who just want something for nothing. And I've always found that when I pay more money, I get a better quality of person to hang out with, and people who want to actually contribute to each other rather than people who just take, because that's what we have in the world, right? Plenty of people who just want to take. Sure, there's contributors out there, but it's very difficult to find a group of people that just want to give to each other and support each other and lift each other.
Yeah, interesting stuff. Cool. Thank you so much for sharing these thoughts, because it's also stuff that I've been thinking a lot about, and very insightful and interesting. Let's finish up with a few like rapid fire questions. Do you have any recommended books that you've been reading lately, or something that you give to the people that you coach?
Atomic Habits by James Clear. Five Love Languages by Gary Chapman, if you can ignore the God Squad. I'm not religious as you go. Yeah, those are two of my favorite books that I've read. Also, Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller is a fantastic book, and Starting with Why by Simon Sinek.
Yeah, Starting with Why is also awesome. Good. I will write this down and give the links in the show notes. A quote that you live by, or anything that you really tell yourself, like self-talk when you're down, or anything like that.
A quote that I live by. I always say life is always trying to teach me something.
Nice. Yeah, it's a kind of a stoical perspective, being indifferent and understanding that anything can happen. You can take it in a good way and in an optimistic way and see the value, or you can say it harmed you. So it really depends how you look at the situation.
I'll give you another one just for a quick fire.
Cool.
When you delay, you pay.
Nice. This is good. This is nice.
And I learned that traveling, by the way. I paid way too much money for flights and hotels and missed out on incredible experiences because I said, I will do it tomorrow.
Cool. And any resources or apps or softwares, a bit more technical stuff that you've been using lately?
So in terms of apps that I love to use, so for anybody who's interested in like meditation, but not meditation, like some people are more spiritual than others, but more of a tangible, I find with men, like we want that tangible, like, you know, to do rather than like out there. There's something called Fit Mind, which takes you from beginner to advanced meditator in a couple of months. It's about 50, I think it's about £50 UK. So maybe about $60 US to actually get on that. But it tells you exactly what they're doing, why they're doing it. It gives you lessons and it's really insightful, but it's super powerful in starting to train and condition the mind rather than just jumping from YouTube video to YouTube video or, you know, like, I mean, there's other apps like Headspace and Calm, which are also great for meditation. But I find that Fit Mind is a great one for more tangible. There's also one called the State app. So an app called State. And this, again, for those guys who are maybe guys and girls who are coming from work and they want to shift their state, maybe they have a stressful day or maybe they're feeling anxious. The State app is a great one. It just uses your breathing because we can use our breathing to shift our state very quickly. It's like most people breathe really shallow. Yeah. Whereas if you breathe from the stomach, and you could get your listeners to do this now, we could just do a little, so if we just practice, like we could do it in for the mouth. I know you said quick fire, but I don't generally do quick. But if you just breathe from your stomach and like really open your mouth, like you're, remember being at the dentist, just open your mouth like at the dentist, yeah? And just suck from the bottom of your stomach and just do a long, deep breath. Some of you are probably feeling a bit lightheaded. You're starting to feel a bit of energy in your body. You can start to feel more oxygen flooding into your body. So simple, but State is a great app because it shifts up your breathing and allows you to change very quickly.
This is a great, it reminded me of bioenergetic stuff and also dynamic meditation. It's also do this kind of breathing, heavy breathing through the mouth a lot. I already feel the tingling and it's already, the parasympathetic system is already kicking in and
on board.
And immediately feel relaxed. And I think it's a good tool for the people that we mentioned that come back home after the 9 to 5 and they need something to shift their mindset into the side hustle. So this is amazing.
I'll give you one more app. It's called Fabulous. So the book Atomic Habits, you'll see in the app Fabulous is great because it uses a lot of the same principles in Atomic Habits, but Fabulous is a great app to try out as well if you want to create new habits in your life.
I will check it out. Cool. Thank you so much. It was so much fun and awesome and insightful. Where can people reach out to you if they want to hear more about you or contact you for sessions?
Yeah, sure. So you can visit masklessmen.com. So I work primarily with male business owners and entrepreneurs. Masklessmen.com if you want a motivational map or you want to have a conversation about talking. If you're a female and you want to take a motivational map, you can come and do a map and I'll still do the same debrief for that as well. So that's absolutely fine. And then I have the Maskless Men podcast, which is on iTunes and also on Spotify. And then primarily, I spend a lot of my time on Facebook or LinkedIn. I don't tend to spend time on Instagram. So if you want to connect with me on Facebook, you can, or you can go to the Maskless Men community where we have a bunch of men in there where we challenge the status quo. We challenge what people believe about things. We have really challenging conversations to get men to remove the mask and to get them talking about the things that they probably wouldn't talk about around other men. We've talked about sex toys. We've talked about, losing our virginity growing up, all of those stories, because there's a lot of shame around different things. And so as a community, we're helping to shift some of that through these conversations that we're actually having.
Nice. And this is so important, like having a confidential area of people who can share their really deep and authentic thoughts and being vulnerable. It's so important. So it's amazing stuff that you're doing and promoting. So kudos.
Thank you. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Have a lovely week moving forward.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to be here, and glad to be here.
Awesome.